my ministers in training all the time about Karl Barth, who said to us that theology, which theology is a fancy word that just means the study of God, that the study of God or that theology should be done with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. Karl Barth, the Swiss theologian, suggested to us that theology should be done with the Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other. And I personally believe that Karl Barth, this Swiss theologian, that he actually stole this idea from the Bible, because a couple biblical writers suggest to us that we're not of this world, but we're in the world. And I think that just paraphrases that you should do theology with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. Another biblical writer says to us that, and I believe that this Swiss writer, Karl Barth, also stole this from him. He says to us that I become the weak to win the weak. In essence, again, that you do theology with the Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other. All that means, that fancy talk, is that you should always, no matter how saved you are, be inclined to the things that are going on around you. And for that, today, I want to speak to you from this thought for the next few moments, and I'm going to have your full attention so that you can grab the full concept. But I want to talk to you in the form of a question from this thought: did you vote? Did you vote? After the Civil War ended in 1865, slavery was abolished and moves were made to treat all citizens equally under law. But because of the then president, Andrew Johnson, who gave each state the right to govern themselves, a number of southern states in which we live were able to introduce legal codes that restricted the freedom of black people. In response, Congress passed the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution in 1868 that provided equal protection under the law for black people. In 1870, the 15th Amendment was approved and gave the right to vote to every male citizen despite their race or color. And although the 15th Amendment legally gave black men the right to vote, Southern legislators then passed the laws which are known as the Jim Crow laws. These laws were created to limit black civil rights and to institutionalize segregation. They were used to disenfranchise black people and prevent them from voting. So the Jim Crow laws included poll taxes that made it impossible for impoverished blacks to vote, unfair literacy tests, and grandfather clauses. These laws denied black people the right to vote, particularly in southern states where we reside. But although intimidated by violence and threats, southern blacks continue to assert their rights, and as a result, several black legislators and congressmen were eventually elected. But it wasn't only black people who were faced with discrimination, but women of all races didn't have the same rights as men. They weren't allowed to vote. They couldn't own property. They weren't legally entitled to the money that they earned. Yet and still, these women who were treated like animals supported and played a significant role as abolitionists, and eventually their support for the 15th Amendment and their campaign of universal suffrage forced Congress to pass the 19th Amendment in 1919, which gave women the right to vote. This meant that all black people were, in theory, entitled to vote. And despite the 12 states in the South where we reside that did not sign the amendments, and despite the constraints imposed against black people by the Jim Crow laws, black Americans kept fighting for their right to vote, but continued to face institutionalized discrimination. Women kept fighting for their right to vote, but faced institutionalized discrimination. And following, family, the Second World War, returning black soldiers who had faced the same risks and dangers as other soldiers were not prepared to tolerate discrimination, so they too added their voice to the fight for civil rights. And then a popular story that many of you know, in 1955, a black woman named Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on the bus to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama. And this action provoked outrage that led Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to form the Montgomery Improvement Association. And what became a boycott of the Montgomery bus system lasted until the Supreme Court ruled that segregated seating was institutionalized. This verdict, family, by the Supreme Court and the history of continued voter intimidation and other civil rights incidents eventually prompted President Dwight D. Eisenhower to push Congress to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1957. This provided for federal prosecution for anyone preventing others from voting, but still, despite the federal law and the potential of federal prosecution, the 12 states in the South in which we reside still refuse black people and women the right to vote. And then in March of 1965, a voting rights march that took place in Selma, Alabama, was brutally broken up by Alabama state troopers. This incident, captured by television reporters, prompted then President Lyndon Johnson to call for legislation on voting rights. He detailed all the many reasons to why black people and women were denied the right to vote. So then in 1965, the voting rights bill was approved, giving both women and black people the full right to vote. So for all of us that are over the age of 18 years and older, you want me to tell you why your vote counts? Because for nearly 100 years, your great-grandmama and granddaddies fought just so that you can punch a ballot. You want me to tell you why your vote counts? Because despite the fact that some votes will be lost and will be misplaced, you got to be just like in the Jim Crow time. Keep voting, because at some point, eventually, the candidate that you desire will be elected. Y'all want me to tell you why your vote counts? Because your vote is the voice for those that of all ethnic groups that are less fortunate, that are marginalized, ostracized. Your vote is their voice. Y'all want me to tell you why your vote counts? Come here, John Lewis. Your vote counts because your vote is the most powerful weapon that's nonviolent that you have. Y'all want me to keep telling you why your vote counts? Come here, Michelle Obama. Your vote counts because voting is what's going to move us forward in the future. Y'all ain't got it yet. You want me to tell you why your vote counts? Then come here, Oprah Winfrey, because when you don't vote, that dishonors your ancestors that could not vote. So let me tell you why your vote counts. Your vote counts because there were people that shed blood, that were chased by dogs, that were washed down by fire hoses. There were people that literally lost their lives just so you can go to the polls and vote. And that's why your vote counts, because many people gave up their rights. Some of them lost their lives. They were chased by dogs. They were washed down by water hoses from the fire department just so you can step inside of a booth and punch your ballot. And I just love the fact of what this man says. One quote says that bad politicians are elected by good people that don't vote. Okay, let me run that back because some of y'all missed it. You can't complain when there's somebody in office when you didn't vote for anybody to be in office, because the reality of what this man's quote said is that bad politicians get elected because good people choose not to vote. And some of us, we complain about who's in office. We make memes about who's in office. We Facebook and tweet about who's in office, but you never punch the ballot. And when you don't punch Oprah Winfrey said it best last week. We dishonor those that fought for, that shed blood for, that had sit-ins. I thought I had some people that lived during the time of segregation in the 60s that can shout with me. But you are the reason that they are dishonored when you choose not to vote. So my question for many of you today, did you vote? Here it is. Matthew, who's our gospel right and tax collector, takes us on a blast in the past. Matthew takes us down the hallways of history, and he brings us to a very critical and crucial time in ancient biblical culture. Jesus of Nazareth has been betrayed by his homeboy Judas. He's been arrested, and now he's on trial. It's interesting because now that Jesus is on trial, these Roman politicians in chapter 26, verse 59, it says that they are looking for something, some evidence on Jesus. But it says that they cannot find anything. Okay, y'all missed it. In chapter 26, verse 29, the Roman politicians are looking for evidence on Jesus, but they can't find anything. Okay, one more time for the people in the back row that ride a different bus than some of us. Let me give it to you real quick. It said in verse 59, it said that these Roman politicians are looking for evidence on Jesus, but they can't find anything. Okay, let me bring it home for you. In other words, we'll get this party started today by me saying this to you. Your enemies are looking for dirt on you, but God has removed it. Okay, God, Maybe that was just the point for me, because the reality is some of us believe that because we got away with something, because we were slicker than a can of oil and nobody saw what we was doing, because we were able to sneak out late at night and nobody caught you. Some of us think we're so good because you think you keep your little business to yourself, but the reality is the Bible says that the eyes of the Lord keep watch on everything. So though you might think that you don't have no dirt, the reality is that all of us have sinned and fallen short of God's glory. So there is some dirt on you, but the joy of all of it is when your haters and your enemies started looking for the dirt, God had already removed it. And maybe y'all can't talk about this because maybe y'all not as dirty as I am, but I know I got some dirt on me, and I can celebrate today because all the dirt I got on me, my enemies are trying to find it, but they can't find it because God has removed the evidence. And is there about 5 people in here right now that you understand that God has removed the evidence that people had on you? Yeah, you did it. Yeah, it was you. Yes, you sent the message. Yes, you did the Snapchat, but aren't you glad that it disappeared in 24 hours? That it disappeared in 24. I'm so glad that my Instagram stories, that they go away. I'm so glad that my Snapchats go away. I'm so glad that God works just like Instagram and Snapchat. And when I got dirt on me, it goes. Your enemies are looking for dirt on you, but God has removed. Jesus is on trial, and the Roman politicians are looking for evidence on Jesus, but they can't find nothing. Jesus, this is a crucial time in ancient biblical culture because Jesus has been betrayed by his homeboy Judas. He's been arrested, and now he's on trial. And here's what I like about Jesus, because we give Jesus this whole passionate Jesus, real cool, but Jesus has an inch of thug in him. Okay, that's just going to mess some of y'all up. Let me show you why. Because when Jesus is on trial, they can't find evidence on him, so they begin to ask Jesus questions. And in chapter 27, verse 11, they say, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And watch Jesus' response. It's so cool. It's so laid back. It's so sarcastic. He says, they said to him, "Jesus, are you the king of the Jews?" He said, "You said so." Okay, it's going to make sense to you. This messes with me because when you go back to chapter 26, around verse 63 and 64, they had said to Jesus, "Tell us that you are the Messiah, the Son of God." And Jesus, his response was the same. He said to them, "You said so." This is interesting to me because this seemingly sarcastic answer by Jesus lets us know how dope Jesus really is. Because Jesus says to them, "You said so." Are you the king of the Jews? You said so. Are you the Messiah? You said so. Cray, where are you going with this? This is beautiful to me, family, because the next time people come talking trash to you, all you got to do is sometimes allow people to predict your future. Okay. What are you saying? Sometimes people will come to you. Have you ever been in a situation where people come to you and they say to you, "Oh, you think you better than people. Oh, you think you got your stuff together. Oh, you think you all that. Oh, you think you more than what we are." See, sometimes you have to be okay with the fact that the Bible says that the power of life and death is spoken in the tongue. But catch this, it does not say whose tongue, it just says the tongue. And sometimes you got to let people predict your future. So when they say, "Oh, you think you better than," yeah, I do want to be better than what you are. When they say, "You think you got it all together," yeah, I do have it all together. "Oh, you think you all that?" Yeah, I do think I'm all that. Because the reality is I've been fearfully and wonderfully made by the one who is all that, the one that does have it all together. And because I was made in the likeness and the image of God, I can strut my stuff with my head up, because Paul said, "I'd rather not boast, but if I'm going to brag, I'm going to brag in the one that created me." So sometimes you got to allow the haters that are talking crazy to predict your future. So don't get mad the next time they say, "You think you all that?" Just hold your head up high and tell them, "You said so." The next time they come to you and tell you, "Oh, you think you got it all together," don't get upset. Just hold your head high and say, "You said so." Because sometimes you got to let people predict your future. That's why That's why, Stephanie, I don't get crazy when family members start talking about, oh, he think he all that. Yeah, he does think he all that. I don't get crazy when people start talking and saying that, I don't know how they got all them buildings. He must be connected to somebody higher with money. Yeah, I just let them keep talking because sometimes I ain't connected to nobody with a lot of money, but since you gonna say it, you said so, and I'm gonna let you predict my future. Some of y'all ain't caught it yet. You got to be okay with some people predicting your future. Some people right now don't even know that you're single, but they keep putting you with somebody. Okay, that's cool. You don't even know my business. I'm single right now, but since you predicting that I'm with somebody, you said so. Sometimes God allows them to predict your future. Jesus says, they say, are you the Jews? You said so. Are you the Messiah? You said so. I love this nature of Jesus because it moves us from outside of our traditional thought of all Jesus is some compassionate person that does not have a sense of humor. And Jesus lets them know, I ain't saying nothing. Why? Because if you say something, I might give you evidence on me that you couldn't find. And sometimes you got to be careful about the conversations you have with people around you because the dirt that God removed, if you talk too quick, you might give them what they're looking for. Jesus said, you said so. This is interesting, family, because Jesus is on trial. But at the time he's on trial, it's a unique type of trial. Because the typical basic trial that we're used to is in this time, you would either go to the high priest, the governor. In our case, you would go before the judge. They would give you a sentence, and then you would go to jail. But this is a different type of trial because it's the time of Passover, the Passover festival. Just fancy term for this. All the Passover festival was it was the time that the Jews would celebrate their liberation from Egyptian slavery. In other words, all the Passover festival it was what we do in America for the 4th of July. Or it's what we do in the African-American community for Juneteenth, right? So that's all it was, a celebration of liberation. So at the time of Passover, because it was such a prominent moment for them and it was a time of celebration, they had different trials. So at this particular time, what they would do on trial is that this trial was designed to release a prisoner. So it was a unique trial, and we find Jesus on trial, and here's the part you got to catch. He's on trial, and the crowd is allowed to vote for who they want to release. So they're asked, who do you choose to release, Barabbas or Jesus? And family, let me drop this on you. I got two things. I'm going to get you out of here. The first thing is, if we're going to vote, you got to make sure you know the candidates. Let me show you in verse 17 real quick, and I'm going to go fast. Verse 17 says, when the crowd got together, Pilate, who is the governor, he says to them, and who do you want to release? And is it Barabbas, who's well known for doing all the criminal work he does, or is it Jesus who calls himself the Messiah? And sometimes, family, you got to catch this. Though it sounds very political, it's not just about politics. It sounds like a political message, but the reality is just like you have to know the candidates that you vote for politically, you got to know the candidates that you elect in your life. Yeah, y'all are about to miss this because you stuck in politics. But see, some of us have allowed people to be elected in our life that mean us no good. So you got to know who you're dealing with in your life. Are you dealing with somebody that adds value to your life? Or are you dealing with somebody that keeps sucking out of your life, leeching on you? You got to know the candidates that you got in your life. And some of us right now are connected to people that they take more from you than what they actually give to you. They ain't never stopped and prayed for you. They ain't never invited you to church. They asked you for $5 last week, $10 this week, $20 next week, but they never gave you nothing back in return. You got to know the candidates in your own life who you're dealing with, because hear this, if they're not adding value to your life, you need to disconnect from them. And maybe some of y'all will catch this. And if you're not adding value to their life, you also need to disconnect from them. You got to know the candidates that are in your life. Not only is it political and not only is it personal, but it's also spiritual. Because there's two candidates that you can elect. One is Satan, the devil, the Beelzebub, and the other is Jesus Christ. One of them is the thief that comes not but to steal, kill, and destroy, and the other candidate is the one that gives life and life more abundantly. So the question becomes, are you sure you know the candidates?
Let me tell you this. Playing football, right? Most of my football players and basketball players, when you play sports, it has become a well-known thing that the first thing you do is you watch film of your own self. Y'all about to catch this. So you watch the previous film from the last game to cover your mistakes and the things you did well. So you watch, Dre, your team. You watch yourself, but then you get film on the other team. And you get film on the other team so that you can know what their schemes are. Y'all are missing this. This preaching is good to me right here, and y'all are missing it. The reason you get film on the other team to find out the schemes for them is because of this reason and this reason alone. You got to know who you're going up against. And you want to know what I'm trying to say to you? Some of us keep losing battles to the devil because we don't know our opponent. And the devil keeps creeping in, doing the same thing over and over again. Let me make it relevant to sports. The devil keeps running the same play, and you keep getting beat on the same play because you never knew who your candidate was. And spiritually, you got to know, are you on the team of the enemy that wants to kill, steal, and destroy, or are you connected to the candidate that gives you life and life more abundantly? It's not only political on knowing your candidate, it's not only personal, but family, it's spiritual. So when you vote, you got to know the candidates. Watch this. It says that in verse 17, Jesus is in a position where he's on trial. And the trial is interesting because Jesus is hemmed up and he's being asked questions. And Jesus answers the questions with sarcasm. And then after he answers the questions, the vote takes place. But they ask him, who do you want to release? Who are you voting for? Do you want to vote for us to release Barabbas, the one that's a well-known criminal, or do you want to vote for us to release Jesus, who calls himself the Messiah? But watch this, what happens. There's a conversation that takes place because Pilate, who's the governor, gets a text message from his wife. And his wife says to him, listen, leave that man alone. Because last night, I was terrified in a dream I had about him. I got to preach this one day when we have a marriage ceremony or a marriage situation, but husbands, happy wife, happy home. Listen to the woman. I ain't got no, y'all sisters acting funny. I will not give y'all a shout out ever again the way y'all act. Y'all missed the whole thing. Don't clap now. It's too late. It's too late. It's too late. You already missed it. It's already gone by. You done missed it now. I did that just for you to clap and you ain't even catch it. Fellas, whatever you do, hear the message. Leave this man alone, for he has terrified me in dreams. But watch this. Verse 20 messed me up. Because listen to what happens in verse 20. It says, and the high priests, which are the Roman politicians, and the elders, watch this, they come together and persuade the crowd on who to vote for. Oh, yeah. So my second thought, if you're going to vote, don't allow people to dictate your vote. Listen to this text, family, because it's going to mess you up. It says, you have the high priests, which are the Roman politicians, and the elders. Right? So I went and I just studied this word briefly, looked in the Greek, looked in the Hebrew, looked in the Aramaic, and right, to find out what this word elders really mean, because in our community, the term elder means somebody that's older than us, right? But that's not what this text biblically is meaning. This term is not talking about somebody that's older. This term is referring to somebody that's in a ranked position. So the elder is not just somebody older. The elder is a leader in the church. So you have the Roman politicians and you have the church leaders who have come together to persuade the people how to vote. Okay, God, y'all, I'm almost done because y'all just ain't getting it. This is better to me than it is to some of you. So catch this now. You have the Roman politicians and you have the leaders in the church who have come together to persuade the people. Okay, let me make this relevant. Maybe I shouldn't go here, but I am. So you have the politicians on Capitol Hill, and you have the black preacher, okay, come together. Some of y'all still missed that. So you have the leaders on Capitol Hill, Trump, and you have Kanye them, and you have John Gray in them, and you have Bishop in them, and they come together to persuade the people's vote. Watch this. It's not just political, but it's also personal. Because there's people that are personally in your life that try to dictate who you hook up with. Okay. See, y'all gonna act real bougie with me today. I can't even take it how some of you acting right now, because you know, just like I know, that there's been people, auntie them in your life, who told you, girl, that's a good man right there. You better hang on to him. Or you got uncle in your life that told you, boy, she fine as new wine. You better make sure y'all ain't saying nothing. You better make sure you keep it. But you got to be careful and not let people dictate who you elect to have in your life. Because some of us have lost personal relationships because we allow people to push us up to who we hooked up with. I know y'all, this ain't going to sound like a pastor, but I know y'all messed up and had a child together, but that don't mean you got to marry her, and that don't mean you got to marry him. Don't you allow nobody to tell you that just because y'all had a baby together means that y'all got to get married. Don't you know that that's going to be worse on the child if y'all get married just out of good loving and not because y'all are really in love? So don't you allow nobody to dictate who you get with. So many folk have been messed up because they let auntie them tell them to marry somebody because of a child, and auntie and uncle are sleeping in separate rooms. So don't you allow personally somebody to dictate who you elect to have in your life. Because why? You got to live your life for you, and you got to live your life according to the statutes and decrees of God that you serve, not the God that they serve, and catch it spiritually. Don't you allow people to spiritually dictate which God you serve. Because let me break it down. I have absolutely no problem with my Islamic brothers. In fact, I have met Farrakhan. I have listened to Farrakhan preach in person. I have no problem with my Muslim and Islamic brothers. I have no issue with them. A lot of times I listen to Farrakhan over some of these Christian preachers. So I have no issue with my Islamic brothers, right? I have no issue with the Buddhists. I'm cool with them. One of my best childhood friends is Buddhist. I have no issue with the Buddhists. I have no problem with Confucius. I don't have a problem with Confucius. I listen to him. I read some of the Buddhist proverbs. I'm okay with it. I'm cool with it. I have no problem with what my Muslim brothers suggest about Elijah Muhammad. That's on them. I have no problem with them connecting back to Allah. And for all the fancy people that talk about we ain't serving no Allah, Allah's just Arabic for God. Okay, y'all just missed that. So I have no problem with my Islamic brothers. I have no problem with my Buddhist sisters and brothers. I don't have no problem with all the polytheistic practices. I don't have a problem with somebody worshiping the ground and saying that's where they get their vegetation and calling the sun god down in the morning so the sun. I have no problem with them. Absolutely none. But what works for me? Okay. See, the problem is we got too many people trying to talk about Elijah, trying to shut down Confucius, trying to shut down all the other. I have no problem with the black Israelites or the black Jews. I don't have no problem with them. I don't have an issue with them. But as for me and my house, okay, I got about 1, 2, 3, 5 churchy people. All I can tell you is Elijah didn't do it for me. I'm cool with Elijah. I love my Islamic brothers, but Elijah Muhammad didn't do it for James Cray. I'm cool with Confucius and the Buddhists, but Confucius and the Buddhists didn't do it for James Cray. I'm cool with all the polytheistic practices, but the grass didn't do it for me, and the sun didn't do it for me, and the moon. I'm just okay with what they do, but as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord Jesus Christ, because that's just the one that worked it all out for me. So I don't let the black Israelites, I don't let the black Jews, I don't let the Muslims, they don't dictate who I elect to be in my life. And I just elected that Jesus Christ will be my Lord and Savior. I gave him my life. I surrendered to him because he's the one that's worked for me. When I was down, I couldn't call Confucius. Confucius Confucius is a little bald-headed man that sits in Indian style that can never move. I couldn't call Confucius. When I was down and when I was sick, when my heart was broken, when I was broke, I couldn't call on Elijah Muhammad because Elijah Muhammad is already dead. I couldn't call on him. I couldn't call on the grass because I walk on top of it. I couldn't call on the sun because it goes down about 7 o'clock. But the one I could call on, y'all ain't saying nothing, the one I could call on was Jesus, because he never goes to sleep at night. He's always awake. He's bigger and larger. In fact, he helped create the grass. He's the one that gave Elijah life. He's the one that carved a little bald head on Buddha. So I couldn't call them, but as for me, I elected to be with Jesus. So you can't allow people to dictate your vote. It's not just political, it's not just personal, but it's spiritual. And I got to let y'all go on this. Verse 21 and 22, watch what happens. It says that the elders, the leaders of the church, and the Roman politicians have got together to persuade the people who to vote for. And then Pilate comes back and says, who have y'all elected to be released? And the people who have the vote said, we have voted that you release Barabbas. Can I help y'all real quick? We have elected to release the one that robbed us, that stole from us, that broke in our homes. We have elected to keep the one in our life that put their hands on us, that took from us and never gave us anything. We have elected the one that chose to go against education, to speak negatively against people, to downplay those that are handicapped and those that are different skin complexion. We elected to let go Barabbas. So Pilate says, what then do you suggest we do with Jesus? Their response is, all the people that Jesus had spoken to their lives, all the ones that Jesus had prayed for, all the ones, can y'all see them in line? The same ones he had touched their eyes that they no longer were blind and could see. They were out there in the crowd. The ones that were broke and he supplied all of their needs according to his riches and glory. They were out there in the crowd. The one that was down on the hospital bed having surgery and had to pray, they were out there in the crowd. The same one that had their heart broke. You know how brokenhearted people love to run to the Lord? The same ones that had their heart broke, they were out there in the crowd. The one that had lost loved ones and called out to him, they were out there in the crowd. The ones that didn't have a house, didn't have a pillow to lay their head on, a bucket to you know what in, or a window to throw it out of, they were out there in the crowd. The same ones that had walked around doing negative stuff to everybody else, but their stuff had been covered, they were out there in the crowd. And all of us were out there in the crowd. And somehow, some way, we elected for Barabbas to be set free and said, crucify Jesus. And I know some of y'all deep folks, you're going to say, well, he had to go to the cross anyway. But it's a more deeper thought than that. All that Jesus has done for us. And when we got our chance to punch the ballot, we selected Barabbas to be released and not Jesus. And my question today, family, not only did you vote, but who did you vote for? And see, y'all looking at Brian Kemp and Stacey Abrams, but I ain't even talking about them. I'm asking you right now, did you vote for Barabbas or did you vote for Jesus? So did you make up in your mind that after all Jesus had done for you, you know how we shouted, when I look back over my life and think about all that the Lord has done, did you vote for Jesus or did you elect Barabbas? Because some of us, the truth is, you elect Barabbas every day in your lifestyle. When your life don't line up with the decrees and commandments of the Lord, when you was with somebody else's husband or somebody else's wife, when you was doing things that were detestable to the Spirit, you was electing Barabbas. When you lied, when you cursed, when you snuck around, you was electing Barabbas. When you decided that you weren't going to church no more, you was elected Barabbas. When you decided that you're going to give up on everybody and everything that's connected to God, you was elected Barabbas. And my question today, did you vote and who did you vote for? And the truth, some of us right now have still yet to vote for Jesus. But I come to tell you right now, as one that's voted, not only in politics, not only voted in my personal life, but voted in my spiritual life, that somehow, some way, I'm going to make it to the polls. If I got to crawl to the polls like the woman with the issue of blood, if I got to get rolled to the polls like the brother that was handicapped and his 4 friends took him, if I got to roll my way to the polls, if I got to just creep my way up to the polls, somehow, some way, if God allows me the grace to get to the polls, I'm punching a ballot that says Jesus. And I just want to encourage some of you right now, and I'm gone, I promise. I just want you to look at the ballot. It's a 5-letter name that's on the ballot, and that's the ballot that I want you to punch. I don't know what Stacey's going to do. I don't know what Brian Kemp's going to do. I don't really know what Trump's going to do. I don't know what Michelle going to do when she run in 2020. I don't know what's really going to happen. But all I can tell you, one thing is for sure, if you elect Jesus, then everything's going to be all right. If you elect Jesus, then your life can turn around. If you elect Jesus, he'll supply all of your needs according to his riches and glory. If you elect Jesus, then your life will be made whole. You got to make the decision. Are you going to vote? And who will you vote for? Everyone stand there.